So I did a thing that every writer says they're going to do and then immediately regrets it. I reread my own books, and I don't mean like a little chapter or just one book at this point. I reread the entire trilogy of The Slave Prince. The one point existed as a 2,000-page stream of consciousness document, and yes, that sentence should concern you, because it concerns me when I look back on it. I mean, a lot. Yeah. A few weeks ago, I talked about going back and rereading The Slave Prince, and that was an experience. There are things I like, there are ideas I still think have potential, but there are also parts that desperately need an editor, a rewrite, and possibly an exorcism. But what surprised me wasn't that the world building problems or the prose and poise problems, it was the structure, or more accurately, the lack of structure. No matter what I did with it over the years since 2020, it never quite lost the feeling of being a giant stream of consciousness. Because that's exactly what it was. The original draft of the complete trilogy was just over 2,000 pages long. It was written during 2020 when I was, 2020. Everybody was having a weird time. I was definitely having a weird time. There's a lot on those pages, and looking back, I can see it on every single page. You can almost hear the narrator asking, "What the hell am I doing?" every couple of chapters. The thing is, I've learned something over the years. I cannot edit my own work. And that's being really honest. I genuinely admire people who can. I know some writers can. Those people have a gift. I do not possess that gift. I can rewrite, I can revise, I can change things, but eventually I become blind to what's actually on the page because my brain starts filling in the gaps. I know what I meant to write, which unfortunately is not always what I actually wrote. So, after finishing the reread, I started looking through some other projects. And this is where things kind of got more interesting. I went back to Chosen. Now, Chosen is probably best described as an urban fantasy series. The first book takes place in 1993. A group of 13-year-olds discover they're chosen to fight vampires, darkness, and monsters, and all the things that go bump in the night. So you've got vampires, you've got elemental magic, werewolves, demons, you've got ancient prophecies, you've got enough lore to make... Oh, it's got enough lore to make me slightly concerned about my younger self. And somehow, somewhere along that way, this became an enormous thing. I didn't realise just how enormous until I started reading it, because Chosen isn't just a series, it's practically an archaeological dig site. There are multiple novels, there are side stories, there's spin-offs, particularly one that I actually kind of like. There are folders full of notes, there are character biographies, there are timelines, there are rewrite plans, there are drawings. This is an entire large storage box. A literal giant box written in black Sharpie on it is the word Codex. The Codex is basically a giant container full of 22 years of accumulated nonsense. Important nonsense, creative nonsense, but nonsense. At some point, I apparently decided that one fictional town in upstate New York required more documentation than the actual, I don't know, the Doomsday Book. There's so much material. There is a folder in there called the Codex Volume 1. And the fact that Volume 1 should tell you everything you need to know about the state of my brain. And while rereading the first couple, something unexpected really happened. I actually enjoyed it. Now, don't get me wrong. I see the problems. Every writer can. I am sure if this was ever going to get published, there would be countless changes. There would be edits, there would be rewrites, there would be sections that need a hell of a lot of tightening, and parts that that part never really goes away. But unlike The Slave Prince, the core of its works, the structure works, the characters work, the pacing mostly works, and I found myself getting pulled back into the story. Not because I wrote it, but because I genuinely wanted to spend time with these people again. And that's a really weird feeling, because I haven't really thought about these characters in that way for a little while. And I think I finally understand why. There's distance. A lot of distance. One of the things that struck me when I was reading Chosen was how little of me is actually in it. The characters don't think like me, they don't react like me, they don't make decisions I would make. If anything, there are certain decisions these characters make that I would completely disagree with in the same situation. They aren't secretly me wearing different clothes, and honestly I think that's a good thing. Because one thing I've noticed over the years is that a lot of writers create self-inserts and they convince themselves they're writing original characters. You know the type. They're 6 foot, everybody loves them, they're secretly the most important person in the room. They're right all the time, and somehow every character exists to tell them how amazing they are. We've all seen it, some of us have written it, and I'm not admitting to anything, but you can make up your own mind. But what I liked about going back to Chosen was realising these characters have their own lives. They feel very separate from me, independent from me, like the world existed even before even if I stopped writing them. And that's a strange feeling, because writing is a very personal thing. I always hear people say they put themselves into their work, and that's true, but you can't avoid it completely. But I think the difference between putting yourself into a story and making the entire story about yourself, that's the difference. The older I've gotten, the more I appreciate that separation. Because when I read Chosen, I don't see every bad decision I made. I didn't see every frustration. I don't see every insecurity. I don't see myself staring back at me at every page. I see characters, actual characters, and that's refreshing. Maybe that's why the world feels more alive to me, because it isn't my world, it's theirs. Westbridge, the fictional town, feels like a real place. Although that's not in every book. I know it's fictional. I know I made it up. But after 22 years of stories, rewrites, notes, timelines, side project, it feels weirdly real. Like somewhere in another universe there's actually a town sitting there dealing with vampires and ancient magic and some very interesting local politics and a sheriff who turns out to be a succubus, but that's a whole different discussion. And yeah, and before anyone asks, book 2 is also a retelling of Frankenstein. Because apparently at some point I looked at this series and thought, you know what, it needs more problems, why not? At this stage we're all committed. The funny thing is that Chosen started as a parody of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. It started as a joke. I wrote it for a writing class when I was a teenager. Very different characters, completely different to what it became. I was basically poking fun. You had to poke fun at something you love, Buffy the Vampire Slayer. And somewhere in between then and now, it stopped being a joke. The parody got serious. The characters become real. The world has expanded. The mythology has grown. And 22 years later, I'm sitting here realising it might actually be the strongest thing I've ever written. Which is not what I expected to discover. Now, before anyone gets excited, I'm not promising publication or announcing anything. I'm not secretly revealing a project. Publishing costs money, editing costs money, everything costs money. This isn't one of those videos where I dramatically announce my return to fiction as I stand there waving, "I'm coming back, people." No. I'm just genuinely re-evaluating my work, looking at old projects, trying to figure out what still works, trying to figure out what doesn't, trying to figure out whether these stories are worth saving, and if I'm being honest, I think Chosen as a whole might be one of them. Maybe not today or tomorrow, but eventually. Because for the first time in a long time, I read something I'd written, and I immediately didn't want to throw it in the ocean. That feels like progress, and maybe that's a lesson? Sometimes distance is very valuable. Sometimes you need years. Sometimes decades. Sometimes you need to go back 22 years and look back at a project, and that's when it becomes kind of clear. I do think if you're too close to something, you can't judge it fairly. You're tangled up in every decision, every draft, every frustration, every late night writing session. But eventually enough time passes and you can look at the thing almost like a reader. Not completely. I don't think that's ever truly possible, but close enough. And when that happens, you sometimes discover something really good. Not that the work is perfect, God knows it isn't, mine isn't, but maybe there's something worth doing with this. And honestly, that's a pretty nice thing to discover. Now, if you made it into this video this far, thank you. I have something special for you. The prologue. This is from 2018. I did record it a few years ago and put it as a members only video, but the prologue is here if you want to hear it. If not, you're still welcome to like and subscribe and do all that stuff. Membership and Patreon is available, but if you want to hear it, that's what we're going to do now. Enjoy. Master, they are here in Westbridge, well, 3 of them anyway. Loza looked down at him, his copper eyes burning to his servant. The cold night air filled the old house as Lazo got up and walking down the old hallway, the walls echoed his steps. We have to find them, the children, and kill them. Let their blood run the rivers of this backwater town red. Master, you know what the books say. They are the chosen. That this chosen may. Laszlo stopped him. They have never stopped me before. I've killed many of them for the 1,000 years. They don't last long once they're called. Another vampire entered the room. Master, I bring you something. The vampire had a boy in his by the hand. He had not been older than maybe 7. A little something for you, Master. The boy in a trance walked over to Laszlo. So, boy, close your eyes. Laszlo asked the boy. The boy did as he asked, and Laszlo bent down and bit into his neck. Within seconds, the boy was dead, laying limp in Laszlo's arms. Clean up the body, said Laszlo. As he turned into the darkness, Laszlo knew the chosen wouldn't be trained, almost too easy for him to pick off. His private room overlooked the town. The lights of the town looked like embers burning in the fire. He knew the chosen were down there in the mass of people and lights, but where? After years of hunting them, he has drunk the blood of so many he has lost count of them. And this lot would be no different. 3 of the 4 are here, so let the games begin. London, 1688. It's been a long few days, the boy thought to himself, the winter's air biting with cold. The boy knew he had to make it to the safe house, but he knew it would be a long night, 6 hours until sunrise. The boy, no older than 15, had very little choice, but he had to make it. He was keeping his speed up. Only the low, almost gold glow of a few candles in some of the windows and taverns lit the way. He took the back streets, but he knew it would be safer higher on the tops of the buildings. The boy climbed the side of the tavern, the prostitutes drunk and falling over themselves as he climbed. The boy could see the safe house. It was maybe 2 miles away, but he had to pick up his speed. The boy started running. He could feel them close to him, and unlike the miles he had already travelled across, the feeling in his gut was too strong. He jumped from rooftop to rooftop, and as he got closer to the safe house, he could hear them calling him. As he moved across the rooftops of London, one of the many vampires tried to grab him from behind. The boy swung around and pushed his hidden stake into the demon, leaving just a cloud of ash. As the boy started running faster, more and more vampires behind him. He could feel them so close, on the streets below him. They started calling out to the boy, "Chosen, we only want to play." The boy just kept running. The closer he got to safe house, the closer the vampires felt, and the boy jumped down, landing with a thud, and ran into a graveyard. The smell of death was in the air, as many of the graves have already been disturbed. As the boy found the door to the safe house, he was pushed backwards and hit the ground hard. The boy looked up, Laszlo, the vampire king, standing over him. "Oh boy," Laszlo said. The boy got to his feet and tried to take out his sword, but with a wave of Laszlo's hand, the boy dropped the stake, the sword, and his weapons. His arms went limp by his side. "Do you know what, boy?" Laszlo asked. "I don't want to die," said the boy. "Well," Laszlo said, "you have to die."